and then you come back to the Commons, it having gone through the Lords, presenting the Commons effectively with a fait accompli. Don't you think that's disrespectful of the House of Commons?
Oh, careful, David Jones, you're liable to do yourself a bit of mischief there. Now, this is the one I've been really looking forward to, ever since Kemi Badenoch, Secretary for Business and Trade, had been giving them swivel-eyed loons in the European Scrutiny Select Committee meeting the slip, I think, on 3 occasions. Well, they managed to corner her yesterday, even though half an hour late. I wonder whose fault that was. I just wonder. And let's just say it made for an uncomfortable time for our Kemi Badenoch. Kemi Badenoch, sorry. And the first loon up was Tory Brexiteer, Tory swivel-eyed loon, David Jones, on this bonfire of red tape that nobody seems to know anything about. Not even these swivel-eyed loons either.
Thank you, Chairman. Secretary of State, the bill completed its passage through the Commons in January, and it was unamended. As you've acknowledged, the thrust of the bill, the method of identifying that element of EU law that should be removed, should be revoked, did a 180-degree turn when it arrived in the Lords. You've explained that you decided on a change of approach. When did you decide to make those amendments in the Lords?
I think that it would have been sometime, I'm sorry, I don't have exact dates. It would have been sometime in March, because it would have been about a month, I would say 6 weeks, of looking at everything that had been taking place. And also speaking with the Lords Minister, who gave me his view of how things were looking and what kinds of amendments the Lords would likely pass, looking at some of the correspondence we'd had from all sorts of stakeholders about what they thought. I just didn't think that we were going to end up delivering what we said we were going to be delivering. And you have to remember, the way I think about these things is probably different from lawyers. I'm not a lawyer, I'm an engineer. I think it is very easy to write things down and pretend that after we've legislated, everything is just going to work as it's been written. In practice, that often does not happen. So my view is that you look at what is happening rather than just not just what has been written down. And what I saw was a process which was doing the opposite of what it was intended to do. The retained EU law bill became a process of retaining EU law. That is not...
Sorry to jump in, but that was 30p Leanderthal's expensive dinner bill.
What we wanted. And so I don't agree that it's a 180-degree turn. I think it's a change in the process. We could have a debate about that, but my view is that what we want to do is get rid of laws that we don't need, and there is a process for that. It is not the bonfire of regulations. We are not arsonists. I'm certainly not an arsonist. I'm a conservative. I don't think a bonfire of regulations is what we wanted. What we wanted was reform and removal of things that we did not need. And this change in process, which I think is still a technical change, is what is going to deliver that. And it's already creating a lot of the impetus, a lot of the momentum, which in terms of showing people what has happened so far. Until I did this, no one knew what was happening. No one knew what was being revoked or reformed. And we could end up in a situation where we're telling ourselves that there's a big bonfire of regulations, and no one would have known what would happen until after the sunset, and then people saw that some things were still there, which we thought we'd repealed. And I was not going to let that happen on my watch.
But isn't it the case that a bonfire of unnecessary regulations is precisely what the Commons voted for?
I don't think so. And I think sometimes what we voted for was getting rid of regulation that we don't need.
Yes.
And that's what is happening.
Yes, but to that extent, what the Commons voted for was a bonfire of unnecessary regulations, to get rid of all those unnecessary regulations. You made the decision to change the approach fairly shortly after you were appointed to your present position.
Well, that's because I don't have control over the timetable. I had to make a quick decision, and I will continue to emphasize this was my decision, and it took a lot of convincing to get the Prime Minister to come on board. But the schedule has been voted in. My new approach has also been voted in by the Commons and the Lords as well. So it has more support than the original than the original status of the bill.
You say that you took the advice of your Lord's Minister. Was he concerned that the bill would get a rough ride in the Lords?
I think we're always concerned about bills getting a rough ride in the Lords. Our concern was about the intention of the bill and the outcome being the same, rather than getting a bill through and congratulating ourselves on passing legislation, and then the legislation doesn't work. It has to work, and that is what I'm focused on.
But the attitude of the Lords was a concern of your Lord's Minister.
The attitude of the Lords is always a concern, because the Lords can amend a bill, they can take time, they can slow it down. And given that we have a sunset of 2023, that's just 6 months from now. The bill has not yet received royal assent. There are powers that need to be used in a few months. I think stopping the bill from passing is actually a concern that is very real. We could have ended up in a situation where it was going to ping pong. The length of time would have meant that we wouldn't be able to use the powers at all. And then what would have been the point of that?
Anybody more confused? That's 30p Neanderthal's expensive pudding bell. Certainly won't be rhubarb and custard, will it, for him?
So we may have an agreement or disagreement about the status of the Lords. I don't think that what we have seen so far in terms of amendments accepted and changes that we've made shows that we're doing anything other than having respect for both houses. Like I said, the schedule was my idea. No one had talked about a schedule. The schedule was my idea, which I felt would help, not just with the smooth passage of the Lords. We're not giving way to many of the amendments which have been put there, but also to deliver the intention of the bill. We would not have even ended up with a bonfire of regulations, as you say, which I don't think would have been right anyway. People need to see what it is we're doing. They need to have clarity or transparency. We would have had an elongated retained EU law process, and that's not what people voted for.
Now, what I found very interesting about that little bit of a conversation was as he prattled on about, we voted for this bonfire of red tape. Well, I saw a very interesting tweet about this little clip from Phil from Different Bias. We all enjoy watching a bit of Phil now and again, where he said she should have called him out on it, so where are these bonfire red tape, what are they? Give me to him now, called his bluff. And I bet you he wouldn't have had a clue, would he? Well, that's my thought. What's your thought? Let me know down below.
But you've actually departed completely from the approach of your predecessor, haven't you?
I don't think I have departed completely. We're still ending interpretive effects by 2023. But this was a bill that was brought in September under a different Prime Minister and a predecessor who was there for 44 days. I spent a lot longer than that looking at the bill, and I did what I thought was the right thing to do in order to make sure that the bill passed but delivered on its intentions. That is my job as Secretary of State. My job as Secretary of State is not just to do what my predecessor did. It is to do the right thing, and that's what I was doing.
But of course the bill met with the complete approbation of the House of Commons, didn't it, in its original form?
No, well, I don't think so, because the House of Commons...
It was unamended,
the House of Commons has voted on in support of the amendments. So that is the status.
No, let's go back before it goes to the Lords. The bill went through the House of Commons unamended, didn't it?
Are you suggesting that we should not make any changes to
which I'd
any?
be grateful if you would answer.
I just answered it, but I don't understand whether you're asking why any change should be made to any bill at all. Is that the question you're asking?
What I'm finding difficult to understand is that when a bill passes through the House of Commons unamended, and therefore clearly has the complete approbation of the House of Commons, you then change your approach completely. You don't tell the Commons that you're changing your approach. You don't have the courtesy to come before this committee so that this committee can scrutinise the changes that you're proposing. And then you come back to the Commons, it having gone through the Lords, presenting the Commons effectively with a fait accompli. Don't you think that's disrespectful of the House of Commons?
Well, first of all, I would dispute several of the things that you have said. This was a Lords amendment, so the change we would have had to make would always have been in the Lords. We rarely, if ever, give statements on changes in the Lords. Like I said, I don't believe this is a policy change. We are still delivering the bill's intent. Secondly, the first time I was asked to attend this committee, I'd just been appointed. I didn't know anything about the bill. What would have been the point of me coming here to say, I don't know, I'm not sure yet? I wanted to make sure that I understood what I would be talking about before I sat in front of the committee. And at each time I was asked, 2 or 3 times I said I would come in front of the committee as soon as we could find a mutually convenient time. You know that as International Trade Secretary, I'm often not in the country, so of course that made things difficult. But also, something you're not saying is that we had private meetings, David. We had private meetings where we discussed this extensively because I knew you had concerns. And it's public knowledge that we had private meetings because when I thought I was having private and confidential meetings, I was reading the contents in the Daily Telegraph. So with respect, I would like to dispute quite a lot of what you have said. But secondly, you are saying that the Commons voted for this without any dispute and the Lords changed it. This is parliamentary process. One, this is not the Lords who changed it, but the Lords did support the change that I made to the schedule. And the reason why I made the change to the schedule is because I could see that the intent of the bill was not what was happening. What is the point of us as MPs voting through legislation which is not doing what we wanted to do just so we can say, well, we passed this legislation? Our job is to deliver for the people of this country. And what the people of the country want is reform that makes their lives better, not just saying we've deleted things from the statute book. That is my approach. I think I have done the right thing. It is not my job just to do what any predecessor does. It is my job to look through legislation, make sure it is working, and make sure it delivers to the people. And that is what I have done. And the Commons voted in support of it. The Commons could have voted against the schedule. It did not.
Very interesting last couple of minutes there. Proper epic fallout between them two. And do you know what the last 4 minutes and very possibly the last 10 minutes reminded me of? They just look like two Brextremists fighting like rats in a sack. It's as if Brexit is just now eating itself, isn't it? This is the one thing that always annoys me in the fact that when the result came in all them years ago, the one thing that were always thrown at people like myself and people like you who on my channel probably voted Remain as well, the one thing that were thrown at us was we knew what we were voting for. Heard it so many times, and it just seems to me no Brexit will ever be good enough, no Brexit will ever be hard enough, and no Brexit will ever satisfy them either. What do you guys think? Absolutely mental, innit? But anyway, let me know down below, and until the next time I shall bid you farewell and take care, my friends.